Rev up your engines! Well, Mazda has a new patent, and they're upping the game on their Skyactiv-X technology. They're also adding a second spark plug inside, which it's fascinating technology because they're basically making gasoline engines that can some of the time work like a diesel engine, where just the pure compression makes the gasoline ignite. They're not diesels, they're gasoline. So they're pretty much putting diesel technology into gasoline cars to make them run efficiently and get phenomenal gas mileage, which they do, and have power. The interesting thing is, at the lower speeds and less torque that's needed, they can run like a diesel engine. The problem is if you accelerate really fast, then they'll knock and the engine will come apart because it doesn't work then with gasoline. It works with diesel, but not gasoline. Hence, they have an ignition system too for fast acceleration and pulling power. They use the spark plug and get phenomenal gas mileage. So, interesting technology that Mazda's coming out with. And it's not like the Nissan variable compression, which changes the actual compression of the engine by having connecting rods that are cantilever and they can go up higher, which is very complex. You know that stuff's going to break. This is all stuff that's built into the car. No moving parts that are complex. Costs a lot to make, costs a fortune to fix. They've used those same systems in diesels for a long 100 years or so. Putting it into a gasoline, it's pretty interesting technology sticking in a gasoline engine. Now, here's a funny one. The U.S. government is saying pretty much, if Tesla wants to tap into all these government billions for electrification, they're going to have to make their Tesla charging stations be available and work for all, that they need to unlock them. Now, I find the whole thing hilarious because get in a time machine, go back, do a little research. When Elon was starting to push his electric Teslas, he said he'll give his technology away, he'll share everything because he's going to electrify the world and save it, right? Barefaced liar on that one because he's got his patents, he sued people for taking some of his stuff. His Tesla superstations only work for his cars. So much for he's going to share the electrification. That turned out to be a load of horse manure. And now the government's saying you're going to either open these things up or voila, you're not going to get all those tax breaks selling your electric vehicles to people. It looks like next week they're going to finalize an agreement, Department of Transportation, that's made to pressure Tesla to expand their EV charging systems and adding chargers that will work on all his competitions, not just on his own car. Then again, there's a lot of money involved here, so I imagine he'll end up caving in and make it so that you could charge your stuff at his stations. But, and here's the thing, you know how governments work. They screw everything up, right? So he'll probably find that, well, if he's got 10 of his chargers there, he'll put one for other cars. And then you'd be waiting in line forever if people actually do start buying millions of electric cars to charge there, because there'll only be one that'll fit your car, and all the rest will be for Tesla cars. You know, there's always a way for these guys to worm their way out of things. But I just find it hilarious that he promised originally he was going to share all of his electrification to help save the world. Yeah, look in the real one. He's keeping all the money for himself. He doesn't want you to use other cars. He won't even share the information to people that bought his cars until they pay extra for it, like the self-driving stuff. He wouldn't even share it to the own people that bought his car. He makes them pay, so I find the hypocrisy is running rampant here. And let's see what happens if he caves in with this, making all of his stations have other charges. But, you know, that goes with the government. They'd have a stipulation, well, years to come, and they won't put a number on how many he has to build. Whenever the government's involved, it's inefficient piles of crap. Money's wasted everywhere. They could be wasting a ton of money doing battery electric cars anyways. They may not pay out. Of course, the government's used to throwing money in things that don't work. And then, oh, well, it's not our money. We just work at the government. It's the taxpayers' money. K. John says, are Dorman hub assemblies any good? Yeah, I've had great luck with them myself. Dorman's a pretty good company. They've been around for decades with Aftermarket. What the company does is they see which cars have problems, and then they manufacture aftermarket parts for those problem parts, which is a smart move because they're going to sell them, right? Now, let's say they manufactured a bunch of parts for Toyotas that don't break. They're not going to sell them. They're not going to make any money, right? So instead, they find which car parts break all the time, and then they have them made for the parts that break and make them better, and they sell them. Makes sense. It's a pretty smart company. I've had good luck with other products. Jason 504 NOLA says, what do you use to read transmission fluid temperature? Well, I use my fancy scan tools. I've got an Autel one. It's like $350 scan tool. I plug it in, and on most of the American stuff, really the transmission fluid temperature. Modern cars have all kinds of information. You just need something to access them. Back in the old days, you would have to put your own gauge on, hook it up. It was a pain in the butt. We mechanics had all the sets, but it was a pain finding it, taking crap out, plugging it in, reading the data. Now, any of the late model cars with a good scan tool, you get all that information, and it just comes up like that. That's the advantage of these OBD2 systems. If they're properly installed and have good software, man, you get a lot of information from those things. Vidal Rank says, my Dodge smokes white, but it's not the head gasket. It's either you're burning water, steam, or you're burning oil. So if you're not losing coolant, your head gasket's not bad, it's burning oil. Now, it's a Dodge. They have two problems. Numero uno, a lot of them had bad valve seals. Let your car idle for 20, 30 minutes in your driveway. If it's idling and it starts really smoking white, you got bad valve seals, right? If it's the piston rings, it will burn more as you drive down the road. But the valve seals, if you just sit there idling, the oil pools on the top just idling. And then it starts getting sucked in because the valve seals are shot, and it goes around the seals, and then it smokes white. So if you sit there idling and it smokes white a lot, it's valve seals. Whether it's valve seals or piston rings, either way, you got to tear the engine apart to fix it. So it's kind of a moot point. You got a worn out engine, and you're either going to have to fix it or just live with it. Dambu says, what happens if I put too much oil in my engine? Well, bad things can happen. Now, a half a quarter, something, a little bit, isn't going to really hurt it. But if you put way too much, like some people, they forgot to drain it, or they drained the wrong thing and then added 5 more quarts, you'll have so much oil, it can actually bend your piston rods because the oil's all in there. There's no place for it to go, so the piston rod gets bent. And then all your oil seals will start blowing because there's too much pressure. There's so much oil. Well, you blow the rear end seal, you got to pull the engine out to replace it. Costs you a small fortune. So always check the dipstick. You always want it at the top one, and that's it. You have your oil changed. If you don't do it yourself, when you get home, check it. Make sure they didn't put too much or too little. Both of them are bad. But if you put way too much, you can really do damage from too much oil pressure. The seals will leak. Sometimes you can bend stuff inside. Haji says, can you imagine Elon making Teslas like Transformers? Elon can imagine anything, right? But all I have to say is, he had those robots that he made, right? And that guy practically had to hold them up. They didn't do anything. So I don't think they'd be very scary considering the way he makes stuff. If you've seen the Honda robot climb upstairs, dance around, right? Honda's a much better engineering company than anything that clown ever put out in Tesla, yeah? So if anybody's going to make crime-fighting robots, it'll be the Japanese. It won't be Elon Musk and Teslas. They would probably just fall off or maybe start on fire, climb itself into a wall, and fall off and break. Robin Dudley said, what do you think about hybrids in cold weather? Hybrids have both gasoline engines and electric motors and smaller electric boost batteries. They're not big like full electric cars. They can't go that far. The really, really modern plug-in hybrids, some like the Toyotas, can go maybe 25 miles on electricity. The regular hybrids, the hybrid motor is just for a boost. So in cold weather, they still work because you're mainly driving on a gasoline engine, and when you're driving down the road, then it can recharge the electric battery for more boost and stuff as you're going down the road. They're not like an electric car where you got to plug it in the cold weather. That's it. If it gets too cold and it doesn't work, you're stuck with an electric car. But the hybrids, the cold weather does not affect them like fully electric cars. For example, I know many people up north that have Toyota Priuses. They have no problems at all in the winter. They get a little bit worse gas mileage, but everybody gets worse gas mileage in winter. When it's colder, cars get worse gas mileage. Fully electric cars, though, no, they are a real problem. But not the hybrid cars, really. Jaron Harris says, is it safe to make a carbureted engine run off LPG? Oh, yeah, people have been doing it for ages. If it's set up right, I'll give you a perfect example. A house here in Tennessee has one of those Generac generators, right? And we got it hooked up to the gas line to the house. And so power goes out, it automatically turns itself, runs the house, right? Seamless. You don't lose power. Well, that thing also came with a carburetor. It's got to be set up right, though. It's not just something you can fiddle with yourself. You need an expert to do that. James Dunn said, if I pay to get my check engine light fixed, how do I ensure it'll pass the inspection? You get a cheap scan tool for $25 that'll tell you that. It's called I Am Readiness. You would just plug it in, and it would show you whether it would pass or not. Now, once you have a check engine light fixed and taken off, your car has to go through what's called the drive cycle. And if you don't go through the entire drive cycle, it might take a day or 2 or 3. You got to go on the highway so long, in cities, stop backwards all over the place. But normally, after driving 2 or 3 days, it should have gone through the drive cycle. But if you don't go through the drive cycle, when you plug one of those scan tools in, it'll say mill not ready. You can pass the test with only one mill not ready. When you reset it, there's a whole bunch of mill not readies. But if it gets to just one mill not ready and the check engine light is doesn't have any codes, then it will pass. So even a cheap little $25, $30 scan tool will give you that information. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, Remember to ring that bell.